The Valori Empire had never known defeat. For 100 years, they had moved through the galaxy like a great wave, swallowing everything in their path. 12 star systems had fallen to their armies. Dozens of species had bent their knees and accepted chains. The Valori believed this was the natural order of things. They were strong. Others were weak. The strong ruled. The weak served. High Marshal Tovin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and looked at the blue planet on his viewing screen. It was a small world, covered mostly in water, orbiting an ordinary yellow star. The species that lived there called it Earth. They called themselves humans. Tovin had read the intelligence reports. Humans were soft creatures. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They lived short lives, rarely more than 100 years. They had only recently discovered how to travel between stars, and their technology was primitive compared to the Valori. They should have been easy prey. The Imperial Council had given Tovin 40,000 warriors for this mission. It was considered generous. Most species surrendered after seeing half that number. The Council expected this campaign to last no more than a few weeks. Tovin would land his forces, crush any resistance, and install a colonial government. The humans would learn to serve, as all species eventually did. "Begin descent," Tovin ordered. His voice was calm, almost bored. He had done this many times before. Far below, on Earth's moon, a young woman named Una Park sat alone in an observation room. She was a lieutenant in the United Earth Defense Force, assigned to the Lunar Observation Post. It was considered a quiet posting, far from the politics and noise of Earth. Una had requested it specifically. She liked the silence of space. She liked watching the stars. Tonight, the stars were wrong. Una leaned forward in her chair, her eyes fixed on her instruments. There were lights moving where no lights should be. Too many lights. Too fast. Too organized. Her hands moved across her console, running calculations. Her heart began to beat faster. The readings made no sense. She ran them again. The same result. 40,000 signatures. Military formation. Approaching Earth. Una's mouth went dry. She had trained for this moment. The training was different from reality. In training, the numbers were smaller. In training, someone else made the decisions. Now she was alone, and the fate of her world might depend on what she did in the next few minutes. She opened a communication channel to Earth. Her voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. "Command, this is Lunar Post 7. I am detecting an unknown hostile formation. 40,000 signatures. Military configuration. Arrival in 72 hours. Please confirm receipt." There was a long pause. Then a voice came back, tense and clipped. "Lunar Post 7, confirmed. Maintain observation. Do not engage. Command out." Una sat back in her chair and looked at the approaching lights. 40,000. She did not know if Earth had 40,000 soldiers in total. She did not know if anyone could stop what was coming. But someone would have to try. 8,000 kilometers below, in an underground bunker beneath the city of Seoul, General Do Hyun Kang received the message. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He had fought in the Pacific Resource Wars 20 years ago. He had seen cities burn and friends die. He had hoped never to see war again. Hope, he had learned, was a luxury soldiers could not afford. His aide, Captain Mina Lee, stood beside him as they watched the data scroll across the screen. Mina was young, barely 30, but Dalian had chosen her because she was smart and calm under pressure. He needed both qualities now. 40,000, Mina said quietly. Our entire space fleet is less than 200 ships. Our ground forces are scattered across 6 continents. I know the numbers, Do-yoon said. We can't win a direct fight. I know that too. Mina looked at him. Then what do we do? Do-yoon was silent for a long moment. He thought about his daughter, who lived in Bizan with her husband and 2 children. He thought about the young soldiers under his command, most of whom had never seen combat. He thought about all the people who were sleeping peacefully tonight, not knowing that their world was about to change forever. We don't fight their war, he said finally. We fight ours. He turned to Mina. Contact every unit commander. Tell them to disperse their forces. Small groups, hidden positions. Abandon the bases. Mina's eyes widened. Abandon the bases? But that's where our heavy weapons are. Our supplies. They're supplies now, Do-yoon interrupted. If we try to hold fixed positions, they'll destroy us from orbit. We can't stop them from landing. We can't stop them from taking our cities. But we can make sure that every step they take on our soil costs them blood. He pulled up a map of the Korean peninsula on the screen. Mountains, forests, rivers, caves. Terrain that had sheltered guerrilla fighters for thousands of years. Our ancestors fought invaders in these mountains, Do-yoon said. The Japanese. The Chinese. The Mongols. None of them ever fully conquered this land. Because our people learned that you don't have to defeat an army to destroy it. You just have to make the cost too high. Mina understood. She had studied military history. She knew about the wars in Vietnam, Afghanistan, the Pacific Islands. Places where superior technology and numbers had meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight on your terms. They'll be expecting us to surrender, she said. Yes, they've probably never faced a species that didn't. No. Do-yoon allowed himself a small, grim smile. They don't know what humans are capable of. They don't know our history. They think we're soft because we don't have claws or armor. He looked at the map again. The mountains where his grandfather had fought. The cities his parents had helped rebuild from ashes. The land that had endured invasion after invasion and still remained. They don't understand, he said quietly, that our softness is what makes us dangerous. We break. We bleed. We die. And we keep fighting anyway. Because that's what humans do. That's what we've always done. He turned back to Mina. Send the orders. Prepare the welcome. And tell everyone the same thing. What's that? Do-yoon's eyes were cold and hard. We don't surrender. We don't negotiate. And we make them pay for every single inch of our world. The orders went out that night. Across 6 continents, soldiers packed their equipment and disappeared into forests, mountains, and caves. Supply caches were hidden. Communication networks went underground. Cities prepared for occupation, but the people inside them prepared for something else. High Marshal Tovin watched the planet grow larger on his screen. He saw no fleet rising to challenge him. He heard no demands or threats on the communication channels. Only silence. He smiled. Silence meant fear. Silence meant surrender. He was wrong. The silence was not fear. The silence was preparation. The silence was a billion humans looking up at the sky and refusing to break. The silence was the last peace the Valori would ever know. In 72 hours, they would land on Earth. They would expect a quick victory. Instead, they would find something they had never encountered before. Something no intelligence report could have prepared them for. They would find humanity. And nothing would ever be the same. The Valori ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like metal rain. They came down in the Korean peninsula first, a strategic choice based on intelligence reports. High population. Industrial centers. Good landing terrain. High Marshal Tovin had chosen this location personally. He wanted to establish a strong foothold before moving to conquer the rest of the planet. The landing was perfect. 40,000 Valori warriors touched ground in precise formation, their armor gleaming in the morning sun. They were tall creatures, nearly 3 meters each, with thick gray skin and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. Their eyes were black and cold, the eyes of predators who had never learned to fear. Tovin walked among his troops with pride. This was the moment he loved most. The moment before conquest. The moment when the conquered species realized they had no hope. He ordered his communication officers to broadcast a surrender demand on all frequencies. People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Valori Empire. Lay down your weapons. Present your leaders for processing. Resistance will result in extermination. You have 1 hour to comply. The message echoed across the peninsula. It reached the cities and the villages. It reached the hidden bunkers and the mountain caves. It reached every human with a radio. No one answered. Tovin waited. His officers shifted nervously. In their experience, surrender offers were accepted within minutes. Species that saw Valori strength understood their situation immediately. Only fools resisted. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. The silence continued. Perhaps their communication systems are damaged, one officer suggested. Tovin shook his head. He could see the cities in the distance. The lights were on. The infrastructure was intact. They had received the message. They were simply choosing not to respond. Send ground teams to the nearest city, Tovin ordered. Bring me their leaders. 500 Valori warriors marched toward the city of Bizan. They moved in standard formation, weapons ready, expecting either resistance or surrender. They found neither. The streets were empty. The buildings were dark. The entire city seemed abandoned. But cities of 10 million people do not empty in 3 hours. Tovin's officers knew this. They reported the situation with growing concern. Continue forward, Tovin ordered. Find the population. They are hiding. The Valori troops moved deeper into the city. They searched buildings, broke down doors, scanned for heat signatures. Nothing. It was like the humans had simply vanished into the air. Then night came. Sergeant Junho Choi had been waiting for darkness. He was 34 years old, a career soldier who had grown up in the mountains north of Bizan. He knew every trail, every cave, every shadow in these hills. For 3 days, he had watched the aliens land and spread out across his homeland. For 3 days, he had done nothing but watch and wait. Now it was time to act. His unit was small. 12 soldiers, all volunteers. They had no heavy weapons, no air support, no reinforcements. What they had was knowledge of the terrain, thermal camouflage suits that masked their heat signatures, and the kind of desperate courage that came from defending their home. Remember, Junho whispered to his team, we hit fast and we disappear. Don't try to hold ground. Don't try to be heroes. Kill as many as you can, then melt back into the mountains. Our job is not to win tonight. Our job is to make them afraid of the dark. They moved through the forest like ghosts. The Valori had set up a patrol base on a hill overlooking the city. 200 warriors, resting after their march. They had not bothered to set up proper defenses. Why would they? No species had ever attacked them at night. No species had ever dared. The first Valori died without making a sound. Junho's sniper, a woman named Somi-Han, put a round through his throat from 300 meters away. Before his body hit the ground, the rest of the team opened fire. The Valori were strong. Their armor was tough. Their reflexes were fast. But they had never faced an enemy they could not see. They fired wildly into the darkness, hitting nothing. Junho's team moved constantly, never staying in one position for more than a few seconds. They used the trees and rocks as cover. They used the night as a weapon. In 15 minutes, it was over. 60 Valori lay dead. Junho's team had lost 2 soldiers, both killed by lucky shots in the chaos. The remaining Valori retreated toward the main landing zone, firing behind them at shadows. Junho gathered his surviving soldiers and disappeared into the mountains. They left nothing behind. No bodies, no equipment, no evidence that they had ever been there. Just 60 dead Valori and a message written in blood. High Marshal Tovin received the report at dawn. His face showed no emotion, but his 4 hands clenched into fists. 60 dead, he repeated. From a small group of primitives. They attacked at night, his officer explained. We could not detect them. They used some kind of camouflage technology. Our sensors were useless. Then we will burn the forests, Tovin said. If they hide in the trees, we will remove the trees. He ordered an orbital bombardment of the mountains where the attack had originated. The ships above rained fire down on the hills, turning ancient forests into ash. When the flames died, Tovin sent another patrol to confirm the kills. They found empty tunnels. Miles of underground passages, dug during older wars, now abandoned. The humans had moved before the bombardment began. They had known it was coming. Captain Tai Wu-shin had known it was coming because he had planned for it. He was 51 years old, a military engineer who had spent his career building things. Now he was learning to destroy them. The tunnels under the mountains had been prepared months ago, long before anyone knew aliens existed. They were part of Earth's emergency defense network, a secret project that most governments had dismissed as paranoid. Taiwu had filled the abandoned positions with secondary explosives. When the orbital bombardment heated the ground, the chemicals mixed. When the Valori patrol entered the tunnels, pressure plates triggered the charges. The entire mountain collapsed, burying 500 more warriors under tons of rock. Tovin lost 800 soldiers in the first night. He did not report the true number to the Imperial Council. He told them resistance had been encountered, but was being handled. He did not mention that he had not killed a single confirmed human. He did not mention that his soldiers were starting to whisper about ghosts and curses. He did not mention that for the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar when he looked at the dark forests and empty cities. He did not mention that he was beginning to understand fear. Private Somi Han returned to the mobile medical station before sunrise. She was a combat medic, trained to save lives. Last night, she had taken them instead. Her hands were still steady as she cleaned her rifle, but her mind was full of questions. Lieutenant Yoonji Kim found her there. Yoonji was the coordinator for all resistance cells in the peninsula, a logistics officer who had transformed into a guerrilla commander overnight. She sat down beside Somi and said nothing for a long moment. 60 confirmed kills, Yoonji finally said. 2 losses. That's a good ratio, is it? Somi asked. There are 40,000 of them. We killed 60. That's nothing. It's not nothing. Inji's voice was firm. It's a message. It says we're not going to make this easy. It says every step forward will cost them. It says that strength and numbers aren't everything. She put a hand on Sami's shoulder. We can't beat them in one battle, but we can beat them in 1,000 small battles. We can make them bleed until they don't want to fight anymore. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. Somi looked at her rifle. A simple weapon, primitive by Valori standards, but effective in the right hands. What happens if they just decide to destroy everything? She asked. They have ships in orbit. They could burn the whole planet. They won't, Yoonji said. They want to conquer us, not exterminate us. Dead slaves are useless. Burned planets have no resources. They need us alive, which means they need to come down here and fight us on the ground. And on the ground, they're vulnerable. Somi nodded slowly. It made a terrible kind of sense. Get some rest, Yunji said. Tomorrow night, we do it again. Above them, the Valori ships circled like hungry birds. On the ground, 40,000 warriors nursed their wounds and wondered what kind of world they had invaded. And in the mountains, in the tunnels, in the shadows, humanity waited. The first night had been a message. The next night would be another. And the night after that. Until the Valori understood what they were facing. Until they realized that this war would not end quickly. Until they learned the truth that every invader throughout human history had eventually discovered. Earth was not a world to be conquered. It was a graveyard for those who tried. 6 weeks had passed since the Valori landed on Earth. In that time, they had occupied 3 major cities, established 17 military bases, and declared victory to the Imperial Council 4 separate times. Each declaration was a lie. The Valori controlled buildings. They controlled roads. They controlled the daylight hours when their patrols moved through the streets. But they did not control the night. They did not control the tunnels beneath the cities. They did not control the mountains and forests that surrounded every position they held. And they certainly did not control the humans who refused to stop fighting. High Marshal Tovin stood in his command center and stared at the casualty reports. 12,000 dead. 12,000 Valori warriors, the finest soldiers in the galaxy, killed by a species that should have surrendered in the first hour. The numbers made no sense. Nothing about this war made sense. Another convoy was hit this morning, his adjutant reported. 200 soldiers. No survivors. The humans used explosives buried under the road. Our scanners did not detect them. Tovin said nothing. What was there to say? Every day brought new reports like this. Ambush on the roads. Snipers in the buildings. Explosions in the bases. The humans attacked everywhere and nowhere. They appeared out of shadows, killed, and vanished before the Valori could respond. The worst part was the silence. The Valori were used to enemies who made noise. Enemies who threatened and boasted and challenged. These humans said nothing. They did not negotiate. They did not demand terms. They simply killed and disappeared, over and over, like a wound that would not stop bleeding. Lieutenant Yoonji Kim had not slept more than 4 hours in any single night for the past 6 weeks. She operated from a mobile command center, an old subway train that moved through the underground tunnel networks beneath Seoul. Above her, the Valori occupied the city. Below, she coordinated the resistance. Her network included over 3,000 fighters spread across the peninsula. Farmers, teachers, factory workers, students, people who had never held weapons before the invasion, now learning to kill with cold efficiency. Yoonji gave them targets, supplied them with weapons, and planned their operations. She had become the ghost that haunted the Valori's nights. Tonight's operation was targeting a supply depot on the outskirts of the city. The Valori had brought food and medicine from their ships, supplies meant to last through a quick campaign. The campaign had not been quick. Now they were running low, and the depot had become critical. Sergeant Junho Choi led the assault team. He had lost 5 soldiers since the first night, but gained 30 more. Word had spread through the resistance about his tactics, his success rate, his ability to strike and disappear without losses. Young fighters sought him out, wanting to learn from him. The depot has 200 guards, Junho briefed his team. Heavy weapons at the corners, patrols every 15 minutes. But they've made mistakes. They put the fuel storage next to the ammunition storage. One good hit on the fuel, and the whole place goes up. Corporal Hyun-woo Beek raised his hand. He was 19 years old, a former university student who had been studying literature when the invasion began. Now he led a squad of 8 fighters, all of them younger than 25. "How do we get close enough to hit the fuel?" Hyunwoo asked. "Their sensors cover the whole perimeter." Junho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We don't go through the perimeter. We go under it." The city's sewer system had not been mapped by the Valori. They did not think to look underground. Humans were surface creatures, according to their intelligence reports. They lived in buildings and walked on roads. The idea that they might crawl through tunnels full of waste and darkness did not occur to them. Hyunwoo's squad spent 4 hours moving through the sewers. The smell was terrible. The darkness was complete. They navigated by touch and memory, following maps that Yoonji had assembled from old city records. When they emerged, they were inside the depot perimeter, 50 meters from the fuel storage. The attack lasted 3 minutes. Hyunwoo's squad planted charges on the fuel tanks, while Junho's team created a distraction at the main gate. The Valori responded to the distraction, pulling guards away from the interior. By the time they realized the real threat, it was too late. The explosion lit up the night sky. The fuel ignited the ammunition, which ignited more fuel, which brought down the entire depot in a chain reaction of fire and destruction. 200 Valori guards died. The supplies that would have fed their army for weeks burned to ash. Junho lost 3 soldiers. Hyunwoo lost 1. Acceptable losses by the terrible math of guerrilla warfare. But the losses were accumulating, not just for the Valori, but for the humans too. Somi-han, the combat medic, worked 18-hour days treating wounded fighters. Her medical supplies were running low. Her staff was exhausted, and the wounded kept coming day after day, night after night. "We can't keep this pace forever," she told Yoonji during a rare quiet moment. "Our people are burning out. We're running out of everything. Medicine, ammunition, food. The Valori can bring more supplies from orbit. We can't." Yoonji knew she was right. The resistance was winning battles, but the war was a marathon, not a sprint. They needed something more than ambushes and explosions. They needed a way to break the enemy's ability to fight. The answer came from an unexpected source. Ji-won-ru had been born on a Valori colony world. Her parents were humans, captured during an early exploration mission and sold into slavery. Jaimhan had grown up as a servant in a Valori household, learning their language, their customs, their psychology. When the invasion of Earth began, she had been brought along as a translator. On the 3rd day, she had escaped and surrendered to the resistance. General Dayan Kang did not trust her at first. Neither did anyone else. But Ji-won had information that proved valuable. She knew Valori command structures, communication protocols, and most importantly, their weaknesses. "They are not like you," Ji-won explained to the gathered commanders. "They have never lost a war. They have never faced an enemy they could not defeat. Their entire identity is built on the belief that they are superior to all other species. Every soldier you kill does not just reduce their numbers. It breaks their faith in themselves." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The Valori communicate through a centralized network. Every unit reports to their ship in orbit. Every order comes from the ship. If you could disrupt that network, their coordination would collapse. They would not know how to function without it." Dr. Sung-ho-yoon leaned forward. He was a xenobiologist, one of the few scientists who had been studying the Valori technology recovered from dead soldiers. A centralized network means a single point of failure. If we could access their communication hub, we could potentially shut down their entire command structure. "The hub is on the command ship," Ji-won said. "In orbit." Silence fell over the room. The command ship was protected by the entire Valori fleet. Getting there would be impossible. Getting inside would be suicide. But Do-hyun was thinking. His mind worked through the problem, looking for angles, for weaknesses, for opportunities. The Valori were strong in space, but they had been bringing shuttles down to the surface every day, carrying supplies and reinforcements. Those shuttles had to dock with the command ship. "We don't have to destroy the ship," he said slowly. "We just have to get someone inside long enough to upload a virus into their network." Sun-ho nodded. "It's possible. We've been studying their systems. They're advanced, but not incompatible with our technology. Given enough time, I could design something that would spread through their network and disrupt their communications." "How much time?" Do-hyun asked. "Weeks, maybe a month." Do-hyun looked at the map on the wall. The Valori positions, the resistance cells, the supply lines and communication networks that kept his people fighting. "Then we hold for a month," he said. "We keep hitting them, keep bleeding them, keep making them afraid of every shadow and every silence. And when the virus is ready, we find a way to deliver it." He turned to face his commanders. Junho and Hyunwoo, young and fierce. Yoonji, tired but unbroken. Somi, healing the wounded and fighting when she had to. All of them looking at him, waiting for direction. "This is the hard part," Do-hyun told them. "The waiting, the enduring. But that's what we do. That's what humans have always done. We endure, we survive. And when the moment comes, we strike." Outside, the Valori patrols continued their rounds. They walked through empty streets and scanned silent buildings. They did not see the fighters hiding in the shadows. They did not hear the plans being made in the tunnels below. They did not know that their time was running out. 12,000 dead and counting. And humanity was just getting started. The Valori were breaking. High Marshal Tovin could see it in the eyes of his soldiers. The confidence that had carried them through 100 conquests was gone. In its place was something they had never experienced before. Doubt, uncertainty, fear. 20,000 dead. Half his army, destroyed by a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive. Every night brought new attacks. Every day brought new funerals. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking from shadows that the Valori could not see into, then vanishing before retaliation could begin. Worse than the deaths was the effect on morale. Valori soldiers had begun to whisper about curses and evil spirits. They spoke of a planet touched by darkness, of prey that hunted predators. Some refused to go on patrol. Others fired at shadows, wasting ammunition and revealing their positions. The discipline that made the Valori army effective was crumbling. Tovin requested reinforcements from the Imperial Council. The request was denied. The Council did not believe the reports. They thought Tovin was exaggerating, making excuses for his failure. They told him to complete his mission with the forces he had. But Tovin knew the truth. He could not win this war. He could only hope to survive it. In the tunnels beneath Seoul, Dr. Sun-ho Yoon worked by the light of a single lamp. He had been awake for 30 hours, but sleep was a luxury he could not afford. The virus was almost complete. A piece of code that would spread through the Valori communication network and destroy it from within. The concept was elegant. The Valori network relied on constant communication between units and the command ship. Every message was verified, confirmed, and logged. The virus would insert itself into this process, creating false messages, deleting real ones, and slowly corrupting the entire system. Within hours of activation, the Valori would lose all coordination. Their ships would not be able to communicate with ground forces. Their ground forces would not be able to communicate with each other. The army would become 40,000 individuals, each blind and deaf to what the others were doing. "It's ready," Sun-ho announced. His voice was hoarse from exhaustion. General Do-hyun Kang stood beside him, looking at the small device that held the virus. It was no larger than a coin. Such a small thing to decide the fate of a world. How do we get it into their network? Do-Yoon asked. Specialist Era Moon stepped forward. She was a signals officer, an expert in communications and electronic warfare. For the past month, she had been studying every piece of Valori technology the Resistance had captured. The virus needs to be uploaded directly to a terminal connected to their central network, Era explained. The best target is the communication hub on the command ship. It's the heart of their entire system. If we infect it there, the virus will spread to every connected device within hours. And how do we reach the command ship? Their supply shuttles. Era pulled up a map showing the flight paths. They launch from the main landing zone twice a day. The shuttles dock with the command ship, unload supplies, and return. If we could get a team onto one of those shuttles, they could reach the command ship. Do-Hyun studied the map. The main landing zone was heavily fortified. Getting close would be nearly impossible. Getting inside would be suicide. And even if they succeeded, the team would have to survive long enough to upload the virus and then somehow escape. This is a one-way mission, he said quietly. Yes, Era replied. Probably? The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was being asked. Someone would have to volunteer to die for a chance to save their world. Lieutenant Una Park spoke first. I'll lead it. She had been quiet throughout the meeting, listening and thinking. She was the same officer who had first detected the Valori fleet 3 months ago. Since then, she had returned to Earth and joined the Resistance, fighting in a dozen operations. She was calm, competent, and utterly without fear. I've studied their shuttle systems, Una continued. I know how they operate. I can get a team inside. You'll need volunteers, Do-Yoon said. People who understand they may not come back. I'll get them. She did. 8 soldiers stepped forward within the hour. Young men and women who had lost family, friends, homes. They had nothing left except the desire to hurt the enemy that had taken everything from them. Jun-Ho Choi wanted to join. Do-Yoon refused him. I need you here, the general said. When the virus activates, we launch our final offensive. Every fighter we have, hitting every Valori position at once. I need you to lead the assault on the main base. Jun-Ho wanted to argue, but he understood. The mission had 2 parts. Yuna's team would strike the head. His team would strike the body. Both were essential. So-mi-Han also wanted to join. Yuna refused her. You're more valuable here, Yuna said. After the offensive, there will be wounded. Lots of wounded. They'll need you. So-mi did not argue. She knew it was true. But she stayed awake that night, thinking about the 8 soldiers who were about to give their lives. Thinking about all the soldiers who had already given their lives. Wondering if any of it was worth the cost. The mission launched 3 days later. Yuna's team approached the landing zone through the sewers, the same route that Hyun-Woo's squad had used for the depot raid. They emerged inside the perimeter, hidden among the supply containers that the Valori were preparing to load. The plan was simple. Wait for the shuttle to land. Kill the guards during loading. Board the shuttle before anyone realized what was happening. Ride it to the command ship. Everything went wrong immediately. A Valori patrol spotted them as they moved toward the shuttle. Yuna's team opened fire, but the alarm was already sounding. More guards came running. A shuttle began to lift off, trying to escape the chaos. Yuna ran. She was the fastest member of her team, always had been. While the others provided covering fire, she sprinted toward the rising shuttle and grabbed the landing gear. The shuttle lifted higher, carrying her with it. Below her, she watched her team die. One by one, they fell to Valori weapons, still firing, still fighting, still buying her time. 8 soldiers who had volunteered to die, dying exactly as they had expected. Yuna held on as the shuttle broke through the atmosphere. Her suit protected her from the cold and the lack of air, but her strength was fading. She had minutes at most before she lost her grip and fell. The command ship grew larger in her vision. A massive structure, bristling with weapons and surrounded by escort vessels. The shuttle approached the main hangar, and Yuna saw her opportunity. As the hangar doors opened, she let go of the landing gear and floated into the bay. Gravity caught her as she passed through the ship's field. She landed hard, rolled, and came up with her weapon ready. The hangar was chaos. Valori workers ran in all directions, confused by the alerts coming from the surface. No one expected a human to be on the ship. No one was looking for. Yuna moved fast. She had memorized the ship's layout from intelligence provided by Ji-Wan-Ru. The communication hub was 3 levels up, in the center of the vessel. She had maybe 10 minutes before they realized she was aboard. She killed 7 Valori on her way to the hub. Quick, quiet kills, using a knife when she could, her weapon when she had to. She took a wound in her left arm, another in her side. She kept moving. The communication hub was guarded by 4 soldiers. Yuna threw her last grenade, waited for the explosion, and charged through the smoke. 2 guards were down. She shot the 3rd. The 4th got his claws into her back before she put a round through his skull. She was bleeding badly now. Her vision was starting to blur. But she was inside the hub, standing in front of the main terminal. She inserted the device. The upload began. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Footsteps thundered in the corridor outside. Yuna knew she had seconds left. She opened the communication channel. Every Valori frequency, broadcasting to the fleet and the surface. "This is Lieutenant Yuna Park of the United Earth Defense Force," she said. Her voice was steady despite the pain. "We are humanity. We do not break. We do not surrender. And we do not forgive." The upload completed. The door burst open. Valori soldiers poured into the room. Yuna smiled, raised her weapon, and fired. She killed 3 more before they brought her down. In the tunnels beneath Seoul, General Do Yoon Kang listened to her final transmission. He closed his eyes for a moment, honoring her sacrifice. Then he opened them and looked at his commanders. "The virus is active," he said. "Within hours, their entire network will collapse. This is the moment we've been waiting for." He stood, old bones protesting, and walked to the map that showed every resistance position on the peninsula. "Send the signal," he ordered. "All units. Attack everywhere. Hit them with everything we have. Make Yuna's sacrifice mean something." The order went out, and humanity rose from the shadows. The Valori fleet went silent at midnight. First, the communication channels filled with static. Then the static turned to chaos. Ships reported losing contact with ground forces. Ground forces reported losing contact with each other. Orders were sent and never received. Responses came back garbled or not at all. The virus that Yuna Park had uploaded spread through the network like fire through dry grass, destroying everything it touched. High Marshal Tovin stood in his ground command center and watched his army fall apart. His officers shouted into dead communicators, trying to reach units that could no longer hear them. His tactical displays flickered and died, leaving him blind to the positions of his own troops. For the first time in his long career, he had no idea what was happening. Then the attacks began. They came from everywhere at once. From the mountains and the forests. From the sewers and the tunnels. From buildings that the Valori had cleared a dozen times and found empty. Thousands of human fighters emerged from the shadows, all striking at the same moment, all driven by the same purpose. Sergeant Junho Choi led the assault on the main Valori base. His force had grown to over 500 fighters, the largest single unit in the resistance. They hit the base from 3 directions, using explosives to breach the walls and overwhelming firepower to suppress the defenders. The Valori fought back with desperate courage, but they were blind and deaf. Their communications were dead. Their sensors were useless. They could not coordinate their defense or call for reinforcements. Each unit fought alone, cut off from every other unit, not knowing if help was coming or if they were the last survivors. Corporal Hyunwoo Beek led his squad into the heart of the base. They had trained for this moment, practiced it 100 times in the tunnels. Clear the corners. Check every shadow. Move fast but not reckless. The Valori were dangerous, even alone, and a single mistake could mean death. Hyunwoo lost 2 soldiers in the first building. He lost 3 more taking the second. But he did not stop, could not stop. This was the moment that justified everything. All the deaths, all the sacrifices, all the long nights in the darkness. If they did not win now, it was all for nothing. They found High Marshal Tovin in his command center. He was alone, his officers dead or fled, his guards overwhelmed. He stood in the middle of the room with his weapon raised, waiting for the end. Hyunwoo ordered his soldiers to hold. He stepped forward alone, facing the alien commander who had led the invasion of his world. "Surrender," Hyunwoo said. "It's over." Tovin laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. "Surrender to you? To pray? I am Valori. I do not surrender. Your army is destroyed. Your fleet is crippled. You have nothing left. I have my honor." Tovin raised his weapon. "And I will die with it." He fired. Hyunwoo dove aside. The shot missed him by inches. Before Tovin could fire again, Private Somi Han stepped through the doorway and put 3 rounds through his chest. The High Marshal fell. His eyes, black and cold even in death, stared at nothing. Somi lowered her weapon. Her hands were shaking. She had spent months saving lives, healing the wounded, trying to preserve what she could. Now she had taken a life, the life of the commander responsible for everything that had happened. "He was going to kill you," she said to Hyunwoo. Her voice was distant, almost confused. "I know." Hyunwoo put a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you." Above them, in orbit, the Valori fleet was dying. General Dongyan Kang had kept one secret throughout the entire war. Earth had orbital defense platforms hidden in the debris belt around the planet. They had been built in secret, powered down, invisible to Valori sensors. The Resistance had been saving them for this moment. Dr. Sun Ho Yoon had spent months studying captured Valori weapons. He had learned how they worked, how to repair them, how to improve them. The defense platforms were armed with Valori technology, turned against its makers. Captain Mina Lee gave the order to activate. The platforms powered up, locked onto their targets, and fired. The Valori ships had no warning. Their sensors were dead, their communication severed. They saw the attacks coming only when it was too late. One by one, the escort vessels exploded. The command ship, crippled by the virus and unable to coordinate its defenses, took 17 direct hits before it broke apart. Not a single Valori ship escaped the system. On the ground, the fighting continued for 3 more days. Pockets of Valori resistance held out in scattered positions, refusing to surrender, fighting to the last soldier. The humans took no pleasure in hunting them down, but they did it anyway. This was not a war that could end with negotiation. It could only end with one side destroyed. When it was finally over, Do-yoon walked through the ruins of the main Valori base. Bodies lay everywhere, human and alien both. The cost had been terrible. Thousands of resistance fighters dead. Entire cities destroyed. A generation scarred by violence and loss. But they had won. Yoonji Kim found him standing over Tovin's body. She looked tired, older than her years, but her eyes held a spark of something that might have been hope. "It's gone," she said. "The last Valori unit surrendered an hour ago. They're asking to be allowed to send a message to their empire." "Let them," Do-yoon said. "Let them tell their masters what happened here." 3 months later, a Valori scout probe entered Earth's system. It was a small vessel, unmanned, sent to investigate why the invasion fleet had gone silent. It scanned the area around the planet and found only debris. 40,000 soldiers and entire battle group reduced to wreckage floating in space. The probe also found a beacon. It was broadcasting on all frequencies, in every language known to the galaxy. The message was simple. The Valori Empire sent an army to break humanity. 40,000 soldiers came to conquer our world. No one came back alive. We remember every name of every human who fell in this war. We remember every crime committed against us. And we are coming, not to conquer, not to enslave, but to ensure that no species ever again believes that humanity can be broken. We are Earth. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not lose. The probe transmitted its findings to the Imperial Council. When the message played in the council chamber, silence fell. For the first time in their history, the Valori knew what it felt like to be afraid. But the message did not only reach the Valori. Across the galaxy, other species heard it too. Species that had been conquered by the Empire. Species that had been enslaved for generations. Species that had forgotten what hope felt like. They heard of a world that could not be broken. A species that fought from the shadows and refused to surrender. A people who had faced impossible odds and won through sheer determination and will. On 100 worlds in 1,000 languages, the message spread. The Valori were not invincible. They could be beaten. They could be destroyed. And if humanity could do it, maybe others could too. Lieutenant Una Park was buried with full military honors. Her body was never recovered from the command ship, but they built a memorial for her anyway. It stood in the center of Seoul, a simple stone pillar with her name and the names of the 8 soldiers who had died beside her. Below their names, a single sentence. They gave everything so that we could live free. Sergeant Jun-ho Choi attended the ceremony. So did Corporal Hyun Woo-beek, Private So-mi Han, Lieutenant Yoonji Kim, Dr. Sung-ho Yoon, Captain Mina Lee, and thousands of others. They stood in silence, honoring those who had fallen, remembering what had been sacrificed. General Do-yoon Kang gave the final speech. He was not a man given to emotion, but his voice cracked as he spoke. "We did not ask for this war," he said. "We did not want it. But when it came, we did not run. We did not surrender. We fought, and we died, and we kept fighting until there was nothing left to fight. That is what it means to be human. That is what we showed the galaxy." He paused, looking at the memorial, at the names carved into the stone. The Valori thought we were weak because we were soft, because we died easily, because we felt pain and fear. They did not understand that those things are what make us strong. We fight not because we feel nothing, but because we feel everything. We protect not because we are powerful, but because we are fragile, and we know what it means to lose what we love. He turned to face the crowd. The galaxy knows us now. They know what we are capable of. Some will fear us. Some will hate us. But some will see hope. Some will see possibility. And maybe, because of what we did here, because of what we sacrificed, the galaxy will become a little bit better. A little bit freer. A little bit more like the world we want to live in. He raised his hand in salute. To the fallen. To the fighters. To humanity. The crowd responded with a single voice, echoing across the ruined city and into the stars beyond. To humanity. And somewhere in the darkness of space, among the scattered species that had lived under Valari rule for centuries, a revolution began. Inspired by a small blue world that had refused to break. Inspired by soldiers who had fought in the shadows and won against impossible odds. Inspired by a message that said the most powerful words in any language: we will not surrender. We will not be broken. We are humanity. And we are just getting started. The end.